Good morning, lovely people, or evening, afternoon, whenever it is in your time. How are you all? I hope you are well. I thankfully seem to be finally shaking this cold off. It's been about 2 weeks. So most of the symptoms have gone. I'm still feeling a bit and floppy, but never mind, getting on with things. Now, just before I get stuck into today, this morning, I say symptoms have gone, but I've still got anyway. Yeah, I had a bit of a surprise when I woke up this morning. I shot a bit of footage earlier, which I'm going to slot in here. So just as a little warning, if you are an arachnophobic person, if you don't like, you know, the eight-legged friends of ours, look away now while I show you this clip, and then when we're done, I'll tell you can open your eyes again. Right, arachnophobes, look away now. I'll tell you when you can look back. When I woke up this morning, this was what greeted me. Above my head, where are you? It's massive! That is a big spider. Hang on, let me just come back and give it its space, and let's see if I can just bring you in a bit. Whoa, it's going to go a bit out of focus, isn't it? Never mind. Yeah, huge! Huge! Now, I can tell you that if this was in my... So it's right above my bed. Just put it in context. There we go. It's pretty beefy, isn't it? Oh my goodness. I saw it. I did slightly jump, just for a second, just because there's not normally a big black blob up on my ceiling. But I was laughing to myself, sat up in bed, laughing to myself, thinking about my sister, because if that was in my sister's bedroom, she would scream and run a mile. She would leave the building. She would not want to share her space. I don't mind sharing my space with spiders, even absolutely stonking massive ones like that. Look, it's the time of year. We have spiders in the house. They'll be a bit more obvious. The reason they'll be a bit more obvious is because they'll be out and about looking for a mate. In the garden, they'll be very obvious at this time of year. Lots of webs across your path. Most likely you'll see the common garden orb weaver. Beautiful, they make beautiful webs. I'm not in a hurry to get rid of this one. They actually do us a favour in the house by gobbling up any annoying little flies. So yeah, morning little spidera. How are you? Get to work, gobble up the flies, and I hope you've got somewhere nice and snug to sleep tonight that is not my bed. Yeah, when I turn back the sheets tonight, I'll definitely be giving the sheets a shake to make sure she's not in here. Crikey, she's a big one. She's still up there. Anyway, yes. Cracking on, I'm going to just do some ironing with you whilst we chat. Let me just show you a bit close up. This is so lovely. Beautiful old tablecloth. The light is appalling today. We've got thick black clouds everywhere, but this is so pretty with little autumn colours. It's sort of mostly... The embroidery is mostly in sort of brown and orange. I wonder if I turn it that way towards the window, you can see brown and orange with little bits of green. And I just thought, oh, this is absolutely gorgeous for autumn. So quick, let's get on with getting it cleaned and now getting it pressed. And just as a heads up for anyone who's fairly new to the channel, please don't worry when I'm ironing. You will see moments when I leave the iron on the fabric for quite a long time. I know I've given everyone an absolute fright in past videos, but don't worry, it's all under control. The iron isn't on super hot, plus the fabrics, they've just come out of being washed. So yeah, please don't worry. I know what I'm doing. I've been doing it quite some time. I've been playing with and enjoying and etc vintage linens since I was probably in my mid-late teens. So yeah, I've done this a few times. Yay! So I thought, just before I crack into other stuff today, a bit of a catch-up with the last few days, because it's been such a busy time, but on the other hand, most of it's really boring, not filmable, and also I get to the end of the week and I think, what have I actually done? Because it's not my usual really productive stuff where by the end of the week I can think, oh, I've dug 2 beds in the garden, or oh, I've painted a wall, or oh, I've sewn an item, whatever it is. Anyway, so it's a weird time of, yes, ploughing through lists, but not at the end of the week feeling there's much to show for it. So, back to that last video, I was knee deep in that paperwork that's all to be filled in to go to my solicitor, that's all to do with both selling this property and to do with the purchase of my next property. That day, my goodness, I spent a little over 6 hours, and that's just on that first pack, the selling pack, me selling this place. And yeah, it was starting to fry my brain a bit. And obviously, so that was about, in my real time, that was about 5 days ago. So I was still really quite with the cold. It was frying my brain, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop now, because I don't want to make a mistake, because that will just delay the process. I don't want to make a mistake and do something that lands me ending up in, I was going to say at Her Majesty's pleasure. It's now at His Majesty's pleasure. Just on that point, this is for, I suppose, particularly for our UK friends. You know that thing at the beginning of a new year when it takes you ages to write the correct date, as in, like now we're in 2024, it takes me the whole of January and sometimes into February to stop accidentally writing 2023. I'm finding that with having a king. I still think of everything in terms of Her Majesty, so like, QC, Queen's Counsel, our judges and lawyers. I haven't got my head around the idea that it's a KC now. The other day I got my first banknote with His Majesty's head on, not Her Majesty's head on. When I was watching the Olympics in the summer, I kept accidentally singing God Save the Queen for the anthem. Anyway, yeah, I can't get used to it. Not only sort of having a king and sort of thinking of His Majesty rather than Her Majesty, but on the occasions when, I don't know why I've referred to him, why would I refer to him? Maybe to do with Cornwall or whatever, but I've referred to him as Prince Charles. I mean, let's face it, that's all that's all most of us have known, isn't it? A queen and a prince. Anyway, gosh, massive digression. What was I trying to talk about? Oh yeah, filling in the forms, not wanting to do a stretch at His Majesty's pleasure. So yeah, it was over 6 hours and I thought, right, that's it. I'm not doing any more. I'm done for. And I wanted to get up and do something physical instead. It was one of those days of, it had been very much, I need to stretch this very gently because it's got cut work in it. The thing about cut work is where the embroidery is around each of the little holes, this is a little linens tip. Those fibres are different to the fibres of the main body of the tablecloth. And those fibres tend to, you'll almost always find it, they sort of pull a bit tight after the wash. So it's all wrinkly, rimply. So you just have to very gently tease it, very gently, stretch it again back into shape. yeah, so I stopped doing those documents, but because I hadn't finished them, do you remember I said I was going to give myself that treat bottle of wine that I bought? By then it was like a week or so beforehand. Well, I decided I'm not going to have my wine tonight because I don't deserve it, because I didn't finish the paperwork. I told you I'm very good at delayed gratification. Yeah, I decided I would save it. And I'm really glad I did, because then at the weekend I ended up having a lovely long video, what do you call it? Face chat? Face phone? Video phone? You know, when you're talking through your computers with a friend overseas. And that was lovely. So I opened my bottle of wine for that. And yeah, it was just really lovely to have a really good, long catch up, share various excitements, and yeah, just to turn off from everything else that's been going on. It's good to have a break, isn't it? And sometimes the best break can be spending 6 hours just talking with a friend. Delicious. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed the wine for that. So what else has been going on? Oh yeah, so a few I made some notes because I don't want to forget bits and pieces. Yes, so continuing on the theme of my do-up fund, my do-up fund for the next flat. With everything that I knew I would be having to pay for, you know, solicitors, agents, energy certificate, removals, and all the costs involved, I had a fairly good idea of how much things would be. So I'm going back a few years now, starting with all this saving and budgeting. So I had quite a good idea of how much things would be. And then I slightly overestimated how much they would be and aimed with my savings for that. I would rather save too much than too little. And I've already mentioned how I've bought I'm in the process of buying a property which is below stamp duty. Again, for anyone outside the UK, it's a one-off tax we pay when we buy a property. And that only kicks in with properties at 250,000. So if your property is 250,000, you pay stamp duty, and then it goes up in increments. And obviously, the more expensive your property, the more tax you pay. Mine's below that, so no stamp duty. And I'd saved 3,000 for that, which I don't need to use on that now. So yeah, you can use it for something else. The do-up fund. The estate agents came in at less than I thought, so there's quite a chunk of, it's like 1.5 grand. What's lovely is all the little bits now as well. So the solicitor that I used to do my will, that's coming at £220 less than I anticipated and that I saved for. And honestly, this is how things, you know, do add up. That I think it would be quite easy to blow 220 quid. I could just leave that in my current account, and over the next sort of 5 or 6 weeks, I could fritter it away on treats and extra food and all that, etc., etc. So I'm delighted with that 220, but I'm not going to spend it. It's going to go in the do-up fund. Also, I've commissioned now the survey, the full survey for the property I want to buy. There are various grades of surveys you can do. I'm having a full survey done. I don't want any surprises. The full survey is the one that costs the most. But again, on that one, I way over budgeted. I was basing it on experiences in the past, but of course, I was trying to take into account inflation. So that one was way over budgeted, and actually that one is £480 less than I budgeted for. So the 480 and the 220, 700 quid. I mean, that's fantastic. That's a fridge freezer for the new place. Or I think just because of the configuration of the kitchen, I'll probably have a fridge freezer, a kind of all-in-one. You know, I've been looking at fridge freezers online because I was thinking I need more freezer space than fridge space. Loads of those. So anyway, so I went online to have a look, and it looks like so many of them are, you get 70% fridge, 30% freezer, for example, or you get 60, 40, sometimes the fridge is on top, the freezer's at the bottom, whichever way round. I'm not bothered which way round they are. I ideally want a 70% freezer, 30% fridge, or at least 60% freezer, 40% fridge. But I have found out, because I've been in forums to find out too, that the best I can do is 50-50. I never thought I'd see the day when I would be on a forum called Mumsnet. But yeah, I ended up in the Mumsnet forum because someone had posed that question of where can I buy a 60-40, but the freezer is 60, the fridge is 40. If any of you know of more freezer than fridge and in a fridge freezer that's all one unit, please let me know, because I've been scouring, I can't see anything. Anyway, so the leftover from the survey and the leftover from my will solicitor, brilliant, fridge freezer. Or new sofa, because I really need a new sofa. Now, I know a load of you are going to be thinking, yeah, but what about a second-hand, Vivi? Second-hand is, you know, there are some bargains out there, you might even be able to pick one up for free, etc, etc. I haven't looked in terms of the fridge freezers, but I have intermittently for about, oh goodness me, the last 6 or 7 years, I have been intermittently looking with regards to a new, to me, second-hand sofa, because my current sofa is second-hand. I bought it second-hand and it's now 21 years later. So, yeah, but firstly, so many of them are just horrible. They're ugly, lumpy, I mean, just so ugly. And I don't, even second-hand, I don't want to buy ugly. I am very, very aesthetically driven, and if something is ugly, it's going to just upset me all the time. And I know some people might say, oh, beggars can't be choosers, but I'm not a beggar, so I can choose. But the big thing I have found is that there have been a couple that I thought, oh yeah, that's quite nice actually, that would do me. You know, it's like, oh, they only want 150 quid for it, so, oh yeah. Problem is, it's always, every single time, everyone I've looked at is buyer collects. What am I going to do? Just put a massive, oh that's a bit damp, put a massive sofa in my granny trolley, hop on the bus with it. No, impossible. So yeah, it's just, look, I live 99.9% of the time, I live very happily without a car or without the ability to drive. I don't drive at all. But every now and again, I think it's these occasions and I think, oh, it'd be just so handy if I could drive, I could hire a van. Now, of course, the other option would be to do a man and van or woman and van, hire someone. I did that in the past for something completely different, and yeah, it was a bit of a nightmare trying to negotiate an item of, I was buying something for someone else, but trying to negotiate the sale of the second-hand item of furniture, trying to coordinate with them, and then finding a man and van. What day can everybody do? No, can't do it, all that, and then finally, a date and a day and a time, everything was arranged, And then about an hour before I was expecting the man with the van, I got a text to say, sorry, can't do it, I'm poorly. You know, I'm not blaming someone for being poorly, but then, you know, I lost out. So obviously I contacted the seller to say, my transport, I've been let down with my transport. Can you hold it for me for a little while longer? Hopefully my van man will be better in a few days. And they said, well, we won't hold it for you, but if it hasn't sold in a few days, then of course, you know, come back to us. And I think, I can't remember how long it was, 4 or 5 days later, I got in touch with van man to say, are you better? What about this weekend? He said, yeah, that should be fine. Got back in touch with the sellers. No, we've sold it. So, yes, in theory, the whole kind of man with a van or woman with a van is a possibility, but it's a bit, there are a few too many moving parts, and me relying on other people and my experience in the past. I don't want to sound jaded and cynical, but my experience in the past when I'm relying on other people is invariably some form of letdown. So anyway, sorry, back to present. Yeah, I have looked for second-hand sofas. That one was second-hand in the past, but that was in days when I had tons more mates living in London. Everyone's left London. Stop leaving London. So I think with the sofa, it might just end up having to be a new sofa, and by dint of the fact that it's new, I pay for delivery when I purchase it. But never mind, that's details that don't matter. The point is, so far, touch wood, financially, yeah, it's going okay. I'm going to have money to do my things. Because do you remember in the summer when I had that parapet wall out the back and the old chimney stack that we thought was going to be a quickish fix and not too expensive, and then it turned into blimmin' nightmare. I had already, we'd used up our house fund already, most of it, on the initial quote, so then there was that extra to find. So I thought, you know what, I'm just going to have to dip into my future furniture fund, which was obviously was really disappointing, but at the same time, well, I've got to make sure everything with this building is secure for when I come to sell it. I can't sell it saying, oh, by the way, it needs a load of work on the back roof. So yeah, it was a bit irksome having to sell. Has that been repaired a little? I didn't notice that. There's been a bit of a repair to it, but it's hardly noticeable and doesn't spoil it. Yeah, so it's great that I've kind of overestimated on pretty much everything, oversaved. Oversaved, that sounds a bit weird. That's what I've done, I've oversaved. So that, yeah, that fund for furniture and also doing things up at the new flat, that fund is looking pretty healthy. Yay! It's kind of that, it finally feels like I'm being rewarded for the hard slog of the saving. Because it does get a bit tough at times when you just, yeah, you just want to spend a bit and you don't. But there we go. Anyway, so that's all good stuff. What else has been going on? Oh yes, so I thought I'd chat a little bit about this today because it seems relevant. I don't know whether I need to concentrate a bit more. Maybe I'll sit down in a second and chat. But I don't know, maybe it was about this time last year, I got completely back into watching the sort of, you know, the TV type house makeover shows. Obviously in the back of my mind was the whole thing of I'm moving. I mean, those shows are so addictive, aren't they? I think for me it's partly because I love buildings, I love architecture, I love design, I love interior design, fabric design, wallpaper design, furniture design. All of that stuff just really, it floats my boat. Anyway, so I started watching a few shows again and really quickly became completely addicted again. But do you remember, I talked about this, 3 or 4 years ago, because it was the first time I'd seen that channel called HGTV, and I thought it was, what is that? Heavy Goods Transport Vehicle TV? Of course it stands for Home and Garden TV. So I discovered it and quickly became addicted back then. It might have been during COVID, I don't know. But what also quickly became apparent to me was I got annoyed by a lot of them. A lot of the different programmes just really annoyed me because the budgets are crazy. I'm going to mention a few that I really do like and why I like them and why I think they're really, they're actually quite useful to watch. But the ones where, their budget for their decorating is bigger than my budget for my entire flat, as in to buy my next flat, people are spending more than the value of my next property on doing up the kitchen and the living room. Mental, absolutely great. Listen, do what you want with your own money, of course, but I just think, gosh, if you've got that much money, maybe sponsor a homeless shelter with some of it. Maybe they do. Anyway, so yeah, it quickly became apparent to me that some of these shows are just not for me. They just don't, I don't relate to them in any way. I suppose one could liken it. This was something that Richard and Paul, it should be Paul and Tall. Anyway, it's something that Richard and Paul mentioned a few weeks ago on one of their Sunday chats. They were talking about Gardener's World and how, it's always sort of really big, beautiful, quite grand gardens. Not necessarily stately home grand, but, like Monty Dunn's garden, Longmeadow, it's a huge garden, gorgeous. But of course, if you've got a huge garden, you've got the space to do things like have great long paths with a vista of the open countryside. How lovely. But the fact is, for the vast majority of us, that's just nothing like what we have. We have probably a smallish back garden with fence, neighbour on this side, neighbour on that side, and probably a neighbour over the back end of the fence, their back garden. So yeah, they were mentioning, wouldn't it be great if Gardener's World had more kind of sort of realistic gardens, small back gardens like the majority of us have in the UK. And I thought about that afterwards, and I was thinking how it's like with some of the flower shows, isn't it? Like Chelsea, these like really, the highfalutin posh shows, and you go to them and it's all very grand and lovely. Does any of it apply to our own garden? Or, for instance, visiting a garden? So, some of you may not have been watching since then, but in the summer of 2022, my sister and I collected my great aunt's ashes to take her on one final road trip. Went all over the place. And one of the places we went to was one of the RHS gardens. So they're sort of like show gardens. Of course, it's vast. It's absolutely vast. I'm coming back to the houses in a sec. It all relates. It's that idea of if we see stuff that's on this sort of vast, grand scale, especially when you think, actually, that's cost a ton of money too, can we take anything from it and apply it to our own lives and our own humble little homes with our humble little back gardens? I mean, I think there are some things we can take. So when we see these great long, beautiful herbaceous borders. Now, okay, we don't have a herbaceous border so massive in our own garden. But we can take a few ideas in terms of, we can think about how they've mixed forms. So we might have tall plants, you know, generally we'll have tall, medium, small plants, back of the border, the tall plants. But sometimes as we come forward in the medium, if we pop another tall plant in, it adds interest. So we might take something like that. We might think about, oh, how have they used sort of very round leaves next to very spiky leaves to give us that contrast. Really shiny leaves next to quite dull leaves. Colour, of course, we can get really great ideas for colour in these grand gardens. So back to the Hyde Hall, I really loved the dry garden there. Very sort of sandy, gravelly, arid, but loads of Verbena bonariensis just self-seeded everywhere, and it looked beautiful. And there was a bit of a breeze coming up the hill, so it was all, and there were lots of grasses, and it was all just gently wafting, and I thought, oh, that's gorgeous actually. So if I had a little bit of front garden that I wasn't so fussed about growing in terms of veggies or whatever, and it was dry, because we seem to, well, I was going to say we seem to be getting drier, but now we seem to be getting wetter. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is, I'll come to it now. I think sometimes we can take ideas from these design shows in grand, expensive houses. We can, but I just don't. I just feel uncomfortable with the amount of money that's being spent, and yeah, it's not for me. And I think so often those clients, they say things which I go, huh? Are you kidding? I wrote a couple down recently. Yeah, there was one that said, I think they were spending something like £120,000, dollars. That's going to be about £100,000 on a kitchen reno. And she said, we had to keep the changes small as we only had 6 months to do it. 6 months and £100,000 on your kitchen. Are you mad? Are you mad? Yeah. So put it this way, I think my entire kitchen budget will be more like 3,000. It will be the stamp duty that I didn't have to pay. That will be my kitchen budget. I saw another one recently. It was beautiful, beautiful light treatment, shall we say. And it was quite a big, it's like a big old barn. And they'd put a floor in, so it's actually it became 2 stories. So they had living space downstairs and bedrooms upstairs. And they built this sort of staircase going up into the bedroom area. But they left it all open. So the ceiling dropped from the top floor, the bedroom floor, went all the way down to the ground floor, the living floor. And they did this gorgeous light treatment for it with using sort of found and recycled objects. Partly why I loved it. And as they were doing it, I was thinking, wow, that looks amazing. It looked absolutely stunning, but I just thought to myself, how are you going to change the light bulb? Because to put it up, they had to erect scaffolding in the middle of this living space. They had to put up scaffolding to actually do it. And there was no, you see, when we go to our grand stately homes and they've got those massive chandeliers, which are now electric rather than candle, if you have a close look somewhere around the room, you'll see you might not see the handle, but you'll see quite often with a sort of almost like a boss, a shield, with a little bit of metal gubbins in. That's the winding mechanism for the chandelier. So they put a handle into it so they can wind it and bring the chandelier down, both for cleaning all the glass, but also for replacing light bulbs. So yeah, this light treatment was stunning. It was really beautiful, and it actually gave me a few ideas. But I did think, yeah, how are you going to dust it? How are you going to change? Never mind the dust, I don't care about dust, but how are you going to change the light bulb? Imagine all your bulbs blow at once. Actually, you know, if all your bulbs blow at once, fine, you get some scaffolding, erect it, change all your bulbs. But what if just one bulb goes? Do you really want to hire scaffolding for one bulb? Right, I think that one's done. I've been ironing on the reverse. Can you get a sense of it? Oh, it's so pretty. But the ones I do like, is that going to be too wide for my error? Oh, no, it just fits. That's pleasing. I don't really want to fold it too much more and put a load of creases in. Yeah, the ones I tend to like are the ones which are, they're just a bit more humble really, as in the like, say the property size is a smaller property and the amount they're spending is a smaller amount. So I like those two things to start with. And I think because the vast majority of these programs are in the States, so it's quite different in terms of, you know, vernacular building, what have you. But the ones I particularly enjoy are the ones where the design team, the designers, the hosts of the show, they are trying to acknowledge and honour, say, the period of the building. They're trying to retain some of those, if not all of those original features and the original character. It's about doing a sympathetic, somewhere between restoration and refurbishment. So I really, really love, well, you know, I love Hometown with Ben and Erin. I want them to be my neighbours, they're so cute. And you know, sometimes they're doing properties which are, you know, that the overall budget is 250, the entire budget is 250. So they might get a property for 80 and then they're doing 170 to, you know, bring it back to life. That's more my kind of thing. And I think the sort of the design, the style of Erin's style, yeah, it fits with me. There was another one, I can't remember what the name of the show is. It might be just called simply Fixer Upper, is it? With Chip and Joanna. And again, her style, I love that style, that kind of fresh, farmhousey, it's kind of vintage, it's got character, but it's definitely, you know, it's not a museum, it's not pastiche, it's not a theme, it's just her style. I'll be nicking some of her ideas for my new kitchen. I haven't watched so much of them recently because I find him a little bit annoying. He just does this kind of little playful boy thing too much, which I don't like. But yeah, I think from a design point of view, I think they're worth watching. One of the other ones, design-wise, I really love, because some of it I really love and some of it I think, oh no, I wouldn't be brave enough to do that, it's called Restored by the Fords, brother and sister act. He sort of does the grunt work, she does the design. But one of her main things is it's a sort of a white. She loves white and everything's white and then she builds from that. And again, that kind of nod to any sort of repurposing, recycling, repurposing, reusing, refurbing, renovating. So yeah, just being a bit respectful of the building and what was originally there, and can we use it? Can we still use it? Can we use it for something else? I love all that. Who were the others? Farmhouse Fixer with John, what's his name? Who I only recently found out was in that band. Was it Backstreet Boys? No. Anyway, but again, now I think for British viewers, I really like Farmhouse Fixer because it's back on the East Coast. He's based in Massachusetts. Yeah, he's just north of Boston. He's in Massachusetts, but they sometimes go up into Maine to source timber, furniture, what have you. So the properties generally are older. It's none of this sort of like 1950s, 1960s brick ranch style stuff that Chip and Joanna do a lot of. So it's that lovely kind of just those lovely worn-in homes, farmhouses. Absolutely love that. And again, these older homes back east, they tend to be, or at least the ones they've done, they're quite often quite small or small individual rooms. It's more like what we have in the UK in terms of the size of rooms. So again, it's sort of, yeah, I can apply that to my rooms. It makes sense. I don't have these vast, what is this like open, oh, I'm getting sweaty from the iron. They have all this open plan living where, you know, you hear these couples and they literally want to knock down every wall in the house, and so the design team and the structural engineer will say, well, right, well, we're going to have to put this massive beam in, it's going to cost thousands. Oh no, we haven't got money for that. Well, in that case, we're going to have a couple of posts. But we don't want posts. Yeah, but if you don't have posts, the upper story of your building is going to fall through. Well, we don't want posts, but we're not going to pay for a beam, but we want all the walls gone. It's like, have you heard of gravity? The other one that I find a curious, also to say, two of my absolute favourites, Nate and Jeremiah. Oh, I love them both. I crush on both of them. Yeah, fabulous. And again, it's about that thing of the found object and repurposing things, and love it, love it. I don't like brand new squeaky clean, obviously. Well, appliances, I don't mind it for appliances. Oh, maybe I can get a slightly retro looking fridge freezer. Or is that a bit corny? Is that a bit overdone? I'll have a look at some of them. I'm just thinking of a cream coloured fridge freezer. You know the type I mean. It's got that slight vintage styling, so it looks a bit like it's come from the 40s or 50s. Is that a bit naff? I'll look at some and decide. Yeah, the thing that I hear quite often in these shows, and I never know what they mean. They'll often say, and Erin does it loads on Hometown. Joanna does it tons on, not Farmhouse, what's it called? Fixer Upper. Want to go with a European feel. What does that mean? A European feel. You know, if you think about, let's think about some houses in Europe. Let's think about little tiny thick-walled, whitewashed buildings on a Greek island. Let's then think about a communist tower block in Czechia. Let's think about a cabin in the Bavarian mountains. Let's think about the beautiful, gorgeous Italian towns and villages with their terracotta tiled roofs. Let's think about a council estate in Britain. You know, I don't ever know what they mean when they say a European feel, because Europe is so many different countries, so many different cultures, so many different climates, and you know, historically, there's a big period of history that Europe covers. I've never understood what they mean when they say we're going to go for a European feel, and then they show it at the end, and I think, that doesn't look European to me. It doesn't look like any particular place I've ever been in Europe. I don't know. Maybe there's still lots of Europe I need to go and see. But there we go. Anyway, so I have been utterly, you can tell, I've been utterly addicted to watching the home shows again. And I'm really trying to keep a lid on my excitement for my next home. Interestingly, in my head, I haven't moved into the living room or the bedroom, but my attention in my mind keeps wandering to the kitchen in this flat, because it's definitely not to my taste. I don't like it at all. Why have you bought it then, Vivi? As I've mentioned before, it's all about bones, isn't it? It's about the bones of the place. And if you imagine, and this is exactly what I did. when looking at it. You need to imagine stripping everything out of the room, strip all those cabinets out, strip off the paint colour that's on the walls, whatever colour is on. Try to imagine it completely bare and then put your own stuff in. Does it work? So it's more about the space, the footprint, than what's actually being done to it by the previous owner. So yeah, I think apart from the garden, in fact, I think the garden is even second to the kitchen in terms of my excitement for doing up and for making it my own. Making it exactly my own. Oh, can't wait. So the survey, like I was mentioning right at the beginning of this, oh my gosh, I've been rattling on, haven't I? The survey I've commissioned to check out the new property. Fingers crossed that all, there's no hideous problems uncovered. That's due to be done tomorrow. I don't know how long it will take for me to get the report. Obviously, once I've got the report, if there's something hideous in there, then there has to be another whole lot of decision making to do, as in, if there's an issue, how much is it going to cost me to put it right? Is there room, if that is the case, is there room to go back to the seller to say, look, this has come up in the survey, I still want the flat, but I'm going to have to spend all this money to sort such and such a thing out. Let's renegotiate the price down. Yeah. Anyway, that's obviously completely up in the air at the moment. So just have to be patient and wait. I have, do you know what? Should we sit for a second? Let me just think about having a sit for a second. Oh my goodness, I just checked and saw how long I've been talking for. I didn't realise, I beg your pardon. Just chatting and pressing. So I will leave other stuff for another day, finish this off properly, get on with other jobs. The light's a bit hideous today. I was hoping to do some photographing of shop stock. Maybe the clouds will be lovely in part for me, but it doesn't look like it at the moment. So yes, I shall leave it there for now. I will catch up with you again anon. There's a bit more. I keep wanting to tell you about that, my grandma's housekeeping book from the Second World War. Can't wait to share that with you. I will do that another day. That's more than enough for today though, isn't it? And I've still got quite a bit of ironing to do. So I'll crack on with all of this and see you all in a few days' time, hopefully. In the meantime, please keep well, all of you. Any of those of you who've had this lurgy, I hope you're shaking it off now. And if you haven't had the lurgy so far, you're probably going to get it at some point this winter. Stock up on your strepsils. And oh, just to say about the strepsils after that video, I did look them up. They were first made in 1958, so not quite 100 years old. Rather fabulous nevertheless. All right, lovelies, until the next one, cheerio.